My name is Chloe. I'm 34, and I've always believed that the world belongs to those who are bold enough to shape it to their will. My husband, Liam, is 36. He's the kind of man who lets the world happen to him, a gentle river content to follow the path of least resistance. I'm the jagged rock that directs his flow. It's a dynamic that has always worked for us. Or, more accurately, it's a dynamic that has always worked for me. That night, the air in Ryan's house was thick with the scent of craft beer and grilled onions. The bass from a speaker in the corner vibrated through the floorboards, a low, persistent hum beneath the cacophony of laughter and overlapping conversations. Liam didn't have a large circle of friends, so when he wanted to attend something like this Ryan's 30th birthday, I made the effort. I saw it as my wifely duty, a performance of support. I'd have a few glasses of wine, charm his acquaintances, and we'd be home by 11. I've never been a wallflower. While Liam, true to form, was immediately absorbed into a quiet corner conversation with Ryan, I drifted toward the center of the living room, a moth drawn to the brightest light. I liked the feeling of being a novelty, the interesting, sharp-witted wife among a sea of familiar faces. My laughter was always a little louder, my stories a little more embellished. I enjoyed the pleasant rush of holding a room's attention. A few hours and 2 glasses of Cabernet Sauvignon later, I found myself in a circle of people on the back patio. The night air was cool, a welcome relief from the stuffy heat inside. Liam had eventually joined me, taking a seat on the arm of my wicker chair, a quiet satellite in my orbit. The conversation, fueled by alcohol and easy camaraderie, drifted toward relationships. A woman I didn't know, Sarah, posed a hypothetical question. But really, how much do you trust your partner? Like, if things got real, if someone tried to start something, do you know they'd have your back? It was all drunken philosophizing, of course, but the question sparked something mischievous in me. I felt a smirk tug at my lips. I glanced up at Liam, who was quietly nursing his beer, his gaze fixed on the fairy lights strung along the fence. He looked so placid, so utterly harmless. Before the thought was even fully formed, the words were tumbling out of my mouth. "Oh, God, no," I said, my voice cutting through the chatter. "I know for a fact Liam couldn't protect me. I mean, look at him." It landed perfectly. A wave of laughter rippled through the group, sharp and sudden. It was a big laugh, the kind that makes your chest buzz with the thrill of a well-delivered line. I felt that familiar, addictive rush. I had them. So I kept going. "I'm not kidding," I continued, leaning forward conspiratorially. "The man can barely open a jar of pickles without running it under hot water for 10 minutes. The other day, a spider the size of my thumbnail was in the shower, and I swear he almost fainted." The laughter swelled. People were leaning into each other, wiping tears from their eyes. I was on a roll. If someone tried to mug us, we'd be a 2-for-1 victim special. He'd just freeze up and offer them my purse. Even Ryan, Liam's supposed best friend, chimed in, slapping Liam on the back. "She's not wrong, man. You did skip leg day for, what, the last decade?" The whole thing snowballed into a roast, with me as the gleeful host. Through it all, Liam didn't say a word. He just sat there, a strange, tight half-smile plastered on his face. It wasn't a smile of amusement. It was a mask, a flimsy shield he was holding up to avoid making the situation more awkward. I could see he wasn't laughing on the inside, but that awareness perversely only egged me on. Instead of stopping, I doubled down. I pointed dramatically at his arm. "Seriously, though, he has the arms of a 6th grader, no offense, babe." The group erupted again. It was funny, wasn't it? It wasn't like I was saying anything that wasn't, in a literal sense, true. Liam wasn't a gym-goer. He was slender, built for comfort, not for combat. And then, everything stopped. Without a word, Liam stood up. Just like that. The movement was so abrupt it silenced the laughter around us. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. He just walked back into the house, grabbed his jacket from the hook by the door, and walked out into the night. The shift in the atmosphere was immediate and visceral. The laughter died in people's throats, replaced by a thick, uncomfortable silence. The crickets in the yard suddenly sounded deafening. Ryan looked at me, his brow furrowed with concern. "You okay, Chloe? That was kind of harsh." His words threw me. Harsh? It was a joke. We teased each other. It's what couples did. Had I broken some secret, unspoken rule of their little boys' club? I tried to play it off, to regain control of the room. I shrugged, forcing a light laugh. He's probably just tired. You know, Liam. He'll be fine. But inside, a hot spike of annoyance pierced through the alcoholic haze. What was his problem? It's not like I'd lied, and it's not like anyone there was going to think less of him. If anything, I thought I was making him look good, for being a guy who could take a joke and laugh at himself. I stayed for another half an hour, but the vibe was ruined. People were polite but distant. The easy camaraderie was gone, replaced by awkward glances and forced smiles. I felt a weird, unsettling mix of irritation and public shame. Finally, I said my goodbyes and called an Uber. The ride home was silent, the city lights blurring past the window as I replayed the scene in my head, each time concluding that he was the one in the wrong. He had overreacted? He had embarrassed me by storming out? When I got home, the house was dark. I found him in bed, facing away from my side, his breathing too even, too rhythmic to be real sleep. He was pretending. I didn't say anything. I just undressed in the dark and slid into bed, leaving a cold, wide canyon of space between us. He'd get over it by morning. He always did. Morning came, but the thaw did not. The chill from the night before had seeped into the very walls of our home. When I walked into the kitchen, Liam was already there, sitting at the table with his coffee, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up. The silence wasn't the comfortable, easy silence of a shared morning routine. It was a deliberate, weaponized absence of sound. "Morning," I said, my voice overly bright as I poured myself a cup. No response. He just kept his thumb moving across the glass screen, as if I were a ghost in my own kitchen. The annoyance from the previous night returned, sharp and hot. Fine. He wanted to be upset. But this petulant, silent treatment wasn't going to work for me. "Okay, are we seriously doing this?" I asked, sitting down across from him. "Because if we are, let's just get it over with." He set his phone down, the clack of it hitting the wood table echoing in the quiet room. He finally looked at me, and his eyes weren't hurt or sad. They were cold. "Why would you think it's okay to humiliate me like that in front of my friends?" His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp, each word a carefully honed point. I rolled my eyes, a gesture of pure, instinctual defense. "Oh my God, Liam, are you still on this? It was a joke. I wasn't trying to humiliate you." "Well, that's exactly what you did," he snapped, his composure cracking for a moment. "You made me feel like an absolute fool. You don't think I already know I'm not the strongest guy in the world? You didn't need to put it on display for everyone." I leaned back, crossing my arms. It was time to deploy my counteroffensive. "Okay, but you left me there, Liam. Alone. You're mad about a joke, but you thought it was fine to just walk out and leave your wife at your friend's house? How is that okay?" "I needed to get out of there," he said, shaking his head as if trying to dislodge a bad memory. "Do you have any idea how disrespectful you were? You don't talk about your husband like that, Chloe. Especially not in front of other people. It's like you were trying to embarrass me." I let out a short, frustrated laugh. "James, it was teasing." Everyone was laughing. "It's not like I stood up and gave a speech about how you're a failure. And honestly, walking out like that didn't exactly prove me wrong, did it? You left me to Uber home like some random person? What kind of man does that?" His face flushed, a dark red creeping up his neck. I could see the muscle in his jaw clenching and unclenching. "You don't get it, do you?" he said, his voice rising. "You don't respect me. If you did, you wouldn't have said half the stuff you did last night. You wouldn't have kept going when you saw how uncomfortable I was." I threw my hands up in exasperation. "Of course I respect you, Liam. But you didn't exactly act respectable last night, did you? A grown man doesn't just storm out and leave his wife behind because his feelings are hurt over a joke. You could have pulled me aside. You could have said something. Instead, you bailed. And now you want to lecture me about respect?" He stared at me for a long, heavy moment. I could see the wheels turning in his head, processing my words, my accusations. I expected him to retreat, to apologize for leaving me. That was the usual pattern. Finally, he sighed, the fight seeming to drain out of him. He ran a hand through his hair. "You're right," he muttered, his eyes cast down toward his coffee cup. "I shouldn't have left you there. That wasn't okay." I felt a surge of triumph. An admission. I had won. I raised an eyebrow, leaning forward. Yeah, that's what I thought, I said, my tone softening slightly now that I had the upper hand. So maybe next time, don't overreact. If you had just talked to me, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. He didn't respond for a second, just stared into his mug as if the answer was hidden in the black liquid. I just wish you'd think about how what you say affects me, he said quietly. I'm not asking you to change who you are, just think about it. Sure, I shrugged, not wanting to push it further now that he'd apologized. He had conceded the main point. The rest was just details. I'll think about it, but you also need to think about how you handle things. Deal? He nodded, though he still looked annoyed, defeated. I could tell this wasn't over for him, not really. But as far as I was concerned, the matter was settled. I had held my ground, and he had come around. That's how our relationship worked. The river was flowing around the rock once more. I thought the apology was the end of it. In my mind, the argument was won, the equilibrium restored. But the days that followed proved me wrong. Something had fundamentally shifted in Liam, like a subtle change in the direction of the wind that you feel on your skin before you see it in the trees. He'd apologized for leaving, yes, but he hadn't apologized for being hurt. And that distinction, I began to realize, was everything. He still seemed a little off, but it wasn't the sullen, wounded silence of the day after the party. It was something else. A distance. A new kind of quiet that felt less like retreat and more like observation. I've always been the one in charge. I managed our finances, I planned our vacations, I decided what we'd watch on television, and what we'd have for dinner. It wasn't a dictatorship, it was just an efficiency. I was better at it, and Liam never seemed to mind. In fact, I think he liked it that way. It freed him from the burden of endless small decisions. It had always worked. For me, a couple of nights after our argument, he told me he was going out for dinner. With who? I asked, looking up from my laptop. Ryan and the guys, he said, his tone casual, almost breezy. It was all the explanation I got. Or all the explanation he felt he needed to give. I raised an eyebrow but didn't press him. I could guess what this was about. A guy's night where they'd all gather to complain about their wives and girlfriends over burgers and beer. I imagined them now. Ryan, patting Liam on the back, telling him I was awful, that he deserved better. I wasn't stupid. I'd seen the pitying looks they gave me after I'd been abandoned at the party. Men like them, they act like they're above drama, but they're just as bad as any group of women when it comes to gossip. Still, I let him go. Let him vent. He'd come home, get it out of his system, and we'd go back to normal. But when he came back that night, something was different. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't storm in with accusations or renewed anger. It was quieter, more subtle. He seemed lost in thought, a new kind of gravity about him. How was dinner? I asked, trying to sound cheerful. He just shrugged, taking off his jacket. It was fine. Just fine? I teased, trying to lighten the mood. Did Ryan overcook the steak again? He gave me a small, almost forced smile. No, food was good. Just had a lot on my mind. That was it, that was all I got. Normally, he'd regale me with the details who said what, which joke got the biggest laugh. He would have shared his evening with me. This time, he just brushed it off and went to bed early, leaving me on the couch, staring at the muted television and wondering what the hell was going on. Over the next few days, I started noticing more changes. Little things. When I suggested we watch that new historical drama I was excited about, he just said, "You pick. I'll watch whatever." It wasn't his usual easygoing agreement. His tone felt more like he was annoyed than indifferent. When I brought up our plans for the upcoming weekend, he casually mentioned he might go hiking with Ryan instead. Liam wasn't a hiker. He considered walking from the car to the grocery store entrance to be a strenuous activity. It wasn't just his actions, it was his entire bearing. He seemed more centered, more confident. I don't know how else to describe it. He wasn't waiting for my approval before doing things. He just did them. I wasn't used to it, and I didn't like it. Not because I wanted to control him, okay. Maybe a little, but because it felt like he was pulling away from me, building a life in which I was no longer the sole architect. He was shutting me out, and I had no idea why. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, I finally brought it up. "You've been acting different lately," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral as I brushed my hair in front of the vanity mirror. What's going on? He was taking off his watch, and he paused, looking at my reflection in the glass. For a second, I thought he was going to deny it, to retreat back into his shell. But he didn't. I've just been thinking, he said, his voice even. A lot. About us. About me. About what I want. The words threw me off balance. What you want? I repeated, turning to face him. What's that supposed to mean? He shrugged, placing his watch carefully on the nightstand. Just that I've been letting things slide for too long. I've been too passive. Too... whatever. I need to start standing up for myself more. That's all. I let out a short, incredulous laugh, trying to play it off. You make it sound like I've been running a dictatorship or something. Is this still about the party? Because we already talked about that. It's not just the party, Chloe, he said, and his gaze was direct, unwavering. It made me uncomfortable. It's everything. Oh. And just like that, the conversation had shifted. This wasn't about one night or one joke anymore. It was about our entire relationship, the foundation I thought was solid rock. And for the first time, I realized he might not be okay with how things were. For the first time, I started to wonder if I was losing control. The breaking point came a week later. Liam came home from work one evening, and I could tell immediately that something was on his mind. He had that serious look, the one he gets when he's been rehearsing a speech in his head for hours. I decided not to engage, to let him come to me. That's how it usually went. We ate dinner in a silence that felt heavy and charged. I cleared the plates, the clinking of ceramic against the granite countertop sounding unnaturally loud. Just as I was about to escape to the living room, he spoke. We need to talk. I sighed, my annoyance bubbling to the surface. I was tired of this new, somber version of my husband. Okay. What now? He didn't flinch at my tone, which was unusual. Normally, that would have been enough to make him back down. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Why do you treat me the way you do? The question caught me completely off guard. What are you even talking about? The way you talk to me, he said, his voice steady. The way you act like you're the only one who matters in this relationship. Do you even respect me, Chloe? Honestly. I rolled my eyes, a familiar defense mechanism. Of course I respect you, Liam. You're my husband. Why are you even asking me that? He shook his head, a look of deep frustration on his face. Because you don't act like it. You humiliated me in front of my friends, and when I tried to tell you how I felt, you made it about how I overreacted. You don't listen to me. You don't care what I want. Half the time, it feels like I'm just here to be your punching bag. That's not fair, I shot back, my voice rising. I wasn't trying to humiliate you. I told you, it was a joke. You're the one who turned it into this big thing. Thing, Chloe? He said, his voice sharper now. This isn't just about the party. It's about everything. The way you dismiss me when I try to say how I feel. If you really respected me, you wouldn't treat me like this. My face felt hot with anger and indignation. Don't act like you're some perfect angel in all of this. You don't stand up for yourself. You let me handle everything, and now you want to sit here and act like I'm the bad guy? Maybe if you stepped up more, I wouldn't have to take charge all the time. That's not an answer, he said, cutting me off. His eyes were intense. Why did you even marry me if you don't respect me? Was it convenience? Because I was a safe choice? Or was there something else? Because I'm starting to think I'm not the person you actually wanted to marry. I froze. The words hit me like a slap. That's ridiculous, I said quickly. The denial automatic. You're twisting this into something it's not. Am I? He challenged, his voice rising now, matching my own. Because the way you treat me doesn't feel like love, Chloe. It feels like I'm just here. Like I'm not enough for you, and maybe I never was. That's not true. I snapped, but even as I said it, I could feel the cracks forming in my own defense. The foundation was crumbling beneath my feet. You're overthinking this. You're letting your friends get in your head, aren't you? Ryan's been filling you with this nonsense, and now you're trying to blame me for things that aren't even real. My friends didn't make me feel this way, he said firmly, his voice suddenly calm again. The shift was unnerving. You did. They just gave me the push to finally say something. And I'm glad they did. Because we can't keep going like this, Chloe. This isn't healthy. It's not fair to either of us. I crossed my arms, leaning back in my chair, trying to regain some semblance of control. Oh, so what's the solution then? Counseling? Divorce? Are you just going to throw in the towel because I make a few jokes you don't like? This isn't about the jokes, he said, his voice weary. This is about respect. About whether or not you even want to be with me, because right now it feels like you don't. The conversation had spiraled out of my control. He was questioning the very basis of our marriage. I was losing, and I didn't know how to turn it around. Panic began to set in. The idea of divorce, of my life being dismantled, was terrifying. I didn't want that. I liked my life. I liked having him there. An idea formed, a strategic retreat. I had to show him I was serious, that I was willing to change. I had to perform sincerity. I sighed dramatically, letting my shoulders slump. I leaned forward, clasping my hands together on the table, trying to look earnest and contrite. Okay, I said, my voice soft. You're right. If you want to fix it, we'll try counseling. Ald. His eyebrows raised slightly. I could see he was surprised, not expecting me to agree so quickly. Really? Yes, I said, looking him in the eye. I don't want to throw this marriage away. If you think counseling will help, then let's do it. It wasn't a total lie. I didn't want a divorce. But the truth was, I figured this whole thing was just a phase. He was feeling himself after that little pep talk from his friends, but he'd come back down to earth soon enough. Scheduling counseling, making a show of it that would buy me time. He'd see I was trying, and eventually, this new, defiant version of Liam would fade, and my comfortable, predictable husband would return. It was a calculated risk, a gambit to restore order, and I was confident it would work. Weeks went by. The word counseling hung in the air between us, a promise I had no intention of keeping. Every time Liam brought it up, I had a ready-made excuse. Oh, I've just been so swamped with work, I haven't had a second to research anyone. The good ones I found are all booked up for months. I'm on a wait list. I'm waiting for someone to call me back. He seemed to believe me at first, or at least he wanted to. He'd nod, a flicker of disappointment in his eyes, but he wouldn't push. I took his silence as acceptance. I figured he was losing steam, that the urgency was fading. Just like I'd predicted, he was getting over it. The rock was holding firm, and the river was beginning to calm. Then one night, we were sitting on the couch, the television casting a blue glow over the living room. It was a rare moment of near normalcy. During a commercial break, he turned to me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. You never scheduled counseling, did you? There was no accusation in his voice, just a flat statement of fact. I froze for a second, my mind racing for a new excuse. I told you I've been trying. It's not as easy as it sounds, Liam. Don't lie to me, he said, his voice still calm but firm like tempered steel. You never planned to do it, did you? My defenses went up instantly. I rolled my eyes. Oh, come on, Liam. Don't act like I don't care about this marriage. I said I'd do it, and I will. No, he said, cutting me off. You won't. And you don't care. Not enough anyway. If you did, we wouldn't even be here right now. Here we go again, I muttered, crossing my arms. Why do you always have to make me the bad guy? Because you won't own up to anything, he snapped, his voice finally rising, the calm facade shattering. You don't respect me, Chloe. You don't even take this seriously. And honestly, I'm done. I'm done pretending this is going to work. He took a deep breath, and the next 3 words landed like stones in the silent room. I want a divorce. I stared at him, stunned. The sound from the television seemed to fade away. The world narrowed to his face, his jaw set, his eyes filled with a terrifying clarity. What did you just say? I said I want a divorce, he repeated, his tone steady now, resolute. This isn't healthy. You don't respect me, and I can't be with someone who doesn't even want to try to fix things. A laugh escaped my lips, but it was a brittle, incredulous sound. You're not serious. I am, he said, looking me dead in the eye. I've been serious for a while now. I just needed to make sure this wasn't fixable, and it's not. You're being ridiculous, I said, shaking my head, a wave of panic washing over me. This wasn't part of the plan. He was supposed to back down. You're just mad right now. You'll calm down and see how stupid this is. No, Chloe, he said firmly. I'm not mad. I'm clear. I deserve better than this. That's when it hit me. He wasn't bluffing. This wasn't a threat or a negotiating tactic. He meant it. He wanted out. And I panicked. The fear was a living thing, clawing its way up my throat, turning into rage. "Are you kidding me?" I snapped, scrambling to my feet. I glared down at him, my entire body trembling. "You want a divorce? After everything I've done for you? After all the years I've put up with you being weak and passive and—" "Stop," he said sharply. But I couldn't. The dam had burst. "No. You're going to hear this." My voice was getting louder, shriller. "You're pathetic, Liam. You've always been pathetic. You let me walk all over you for years. And now, suddenly, you think you're some big man because your little friends told you to grow a backbone? You're a joke." "Chloe." "No!" I shouted, and to my horror, hot tears began streaming down my face. The rage was mixed with a terrifying sense of loss. "I wish I never married you. You're an embarrassment. A fragile, weak excuse for a man. You can't even handle a little joke without running to your friends like a child, and now you think you're better than me?" By the time I finished, I was gasping for breath, my chest heaving with emotion. The ugly, venomous words hung in the air between us, and as they did, a horrifying clarity descended upon me. In my desperate attempt to hurt him, to regain control, I had just proven every single point he had ever made. There was no one else to blame. Not Liam, not Ryan, not anyone. Just me. He stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The anger was gone from his face, replaced by a profound, weary sadness. Then he stood up and walked to the door. "You don't have to say anything else," he said quietly, his voice hollow. "I'll stay at Ryan's for now. You can call me when you've had time to think about what you really want." And just like that, he was gone. The front door clicked shut behind him, the sound echoing in the sudden, crushing silence. For the first time in our entire relationship, I wasn't the one in control. And for the first time, standing alone in the wreckage I had created, I didn't know if I wanted him to come back. The weeks that followed were a blur of cold logistics and suffocating silence. James did as he said. He stayed at Ryan's, returning to the house only every few days to pick up clothes or sort through his things. Each time I saw him, it was like looking at a stranger who just happened to have my husband's face. The warmth in his eyes when he looked at me was gone, replaced by a polite, impenetrable wall. He was civil, but it was the civility you reserve for a bank teller or a checkout clerk. It killed me. I'd try to make small talk, desperate to break the coldness between us. "How's work?" I'd ask. "Is Ryan's couch comfortable?" My words would drop into the silence and vanish. He'd give short, non-committal answers, his focus entirely on the task at hand, packing a box, gathering his books. The minute his car pulled out of the driveway, I'd fall apart, sinking onto the couch and crying until my head ached, wondering how things had gotten so bad so fast. But as much as I hated the situation, I couldn't bring myself to take full responsibility. It was too heavy a burden. I told myself it was his fault. He'd let his friends poison his mind against me. He was weak for listening to them. That's what I had to believe to keep myself from drowning in regret. The divorce was finalized with an eerie lack of drama. It was as fair as it could be. No one got screwed over. I kept the house, he kept the car, and we split the savings down the middle. But it didn't feel like a win. It felt like an amputation. I had lost a part of myself and I couldn't get it back. After the papers were signed, Liam stopped coming around altogether. My only window into his new life was social media. I'd see updates on his Facebook page, a feed that had once been filled with pictures of us. Now, it was filled with pictures of him. Him, smiling, standing on a mountaintop I didn't even know he had any desire to climb. Him, laughing with Ryan and the guys at a barbecue, a genuine, unforced joy in his eyes. He looked happy, free. The comments from his friends made it clear they were fully on his side. "So good to see you like this, man. This is the real Liam." People I had considered our friends stopped reaching out. The party invitations dried up. The casual texts to check in ceased. It was as if I had been surgically removed from the social circle, and no one had even noticed the scar. At first, I was angry. How could they all turn on me like that? But deep down, I knew why. They were never my friends. They were his. And they didn't like me. Maybe they never had. 3 months after the divorce, the silence from everyone else didn't bother me as much as Liam's happiness did. Every time I saw him post a picture, it was another reminder that he was better off without me. That stung more than anything. I wanted to believe he was just putting on a show, faking it for the world. But the smile in his photos didn't look fake. He looked strong. Different. He looked like the man I used to wish he'd be. But it was too late for it to matter. I tried to move on. I downloaded the dating apps, my thumbs swiping left and right in a hollow ritual. The men I met were a parade of disappointments, weird, broke, or looking for something casual I wasn't emotionally equipped to handle. I didn't even know what I wanted anymore. All I knew was that I didn't want to end up alone. But with every passing week, that possibility started to feel more and more real. The house, once a symbol of our shared life, now felt cavernous and empty. Its silence was a constant accusation. I still tell myself the divorce was for the best. I tell myself Liam wasn't the man I needed, that I deserve someone stronger, more decisive, someone who can handle me. It's the story I have to repeat to get out of bed in the morning. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is dark and the only sound is the hum of the refrigerator, I scroll through his pictures again. I see him standing on a beach, the wind in his hair, a real smile on his face, and a little voice in the back of my head, a voice that sounds suspiciously like the truth, tells me I made a terrible mistake, that maybe, just maybe, the fragile, weak one was never him. Maybe I had been the problem all along. But I'll never say that out loud. Not to anyone.